Championship Sunday, getting things underway with the JAKIB Media pregame show and the road to Glendale, sponsored by our friend Joe Messa of Messa Law and Associates. All the games boil down to this, leading up to the Super Bowl, where the Eagles will kick off at 3 o'clock today at Lincoln Financial Field as they play host to the second-seeded San Francisco 49ers. I know fans were lining up at 4 a.m. this morning outside Lincoln Financial Field, and we're here where many more fans will be joining us as game time approaches at the Gallery Bar, booking games at Ocean Casino and Resort. Mark Farzetta, along with Eagle great and Hall of Famer himself, Seth Joyner, and veteran Eagles reporter, Mr. Derek. Oh, you are pumped, I already know. Seth, I have never seen our friend this amped up and this ready to go for Championship Sunday. I mean, Gunner, you're like tickled pink over there.
Let me tell you something, man. You know, in our show Sports Take Monday through Friday, we all know Rob Ellis. Rob Ellis has been jacked up since Wednesday, so I've given him different ways to calm himself until actual game day. And I said, when game day gets here, then you unleash all that pent-up anxiety, frustration, enthusiasm. So, Rob, if you're out there watching, now's the time to let it go, baby. Now
it's too early.
It's too early. Okay.
Now's the time to let it go. Come on, Seth.
We're under 2 hours away from game time, Seth.
Hey, listen, by the time he get a couple of wings in him in the first quarter, he'll be over there falling asleep.
All right.
And I'll be tapping him on the shoulder. Come on, man, you gotta track the game.
We got a post-game show
too
today.
early, man.
We got a post-game show. You know, Seth,
time, baby.
Believe it or not, that's a perfect segue in how I wanted to open things up today, Seth, because, you know, a lot of these players in the locker room, they've been here before, and then most of them have not been here before. So how do you kind of get that happy medium between the veteran players like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, who have been here and won a Super Bowl, versus maybe the younger guys on the staff, for instance, like a Jalen Hurts, and balancing the emotions going into a big game?
Listen, while, you know, a national championship game is not on the same level as, you know, what Jalen Hurts is going to face today and where he's trying to take this team, as far as his emotions are concerned, he's played in big games and he understands, you know, that you got to be even keeled. It's the same situation with these other guys who've never been on this stage before. You know, it's real easy to get overhyped and go out for warm-ups and, for lack of a better word, you know, shoot your load in warm-ups, and by the time you get to the second quarter, you ain't got nothing left, okay? I mean, you've only got so much energy stores in your body to be able to play this 60-minute football game. So you better be trying to, you know, preserve as much of it as you can while you can, so that when you call upon the energy and the adrenaline that's necessary at crunch time in these games, you can conjure it up, because it's real easy. You know, guys will be in the locker room at halftime eating chocolate bars, you know, Hershey bars and all kind of stuff, trying to conjure up some false energy. That's why you got to stay even keel until the first kickoff to the first series, and then you can kind of let it out, but you can't let it all out because you got a long game to play.
You know, the challenges have kept on coming for the Philadelphia Eagles this year, and most notably Jalen Hurts. And I know there's some injuries that we're going to get into in a second here, Gunner, but I want to first ask you about Jalen Hurts. It seems every single test that has been in front of him this season, he has passed with flying colors, whether it was whether or not he could be the guy, whether or not he could be the franchise quarterback, whether or not he could lead this team back to the playoffs, whether or not he could get a playoff win. He has continued to check those boxes. How prepared do you think he is for today?
There is nobody more prepared in that locker room than Jalen Hurts. He understands what's at stake. Jalen Hurts and that entire Eagles team, they remember what happened to them last year. You know, they were untested in a lot of ways. They went in against Tampa Bay, and they got embarrassed by Tampa Bay. But it was a great learning tool for a lot of guys who are still here. That's still very much etched in the back of their minds. They go into a game like this and they say to themselves, this is in our backyard. We have compiled all these stats. We are the most dangerous offense in the league. We are the defense with 70 regular season sacks, third best ever in the history of pro football, 75 including the playoffs. They've got to come in our house to beat that. Jalen Hurts is the consummate poker player. You don't know what he's thinking on the outside, but the wheels are always spinning on the inside. And his teammates are going to feed off of that. Once it's 3 o'clock and the kickoff begins, they are going to feed off Jalen Hurts as they've done all season long.
Really incredible. And when you talk about the tests that have been in front of him, stop me if you guys have heard this before, the Eagles haven't played anybody. They have the easiest schedule in all of football. Well, Well, take a look at these numbers from our friend Jeff Kerr, who put these numbers together. When you look at Jalen Hurts' season against top 10 defenses, and as you guys know, the San Francisco 49ers put forth the best defense in the NFL. But Hurts right there, the number that jumps out to me, 11-1, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a near 119 passer rating. Seth, those numbers jump out to me about the type of day Jalen Hurts can have.
You know what? I'm really sick and tired of hearing, that the Eagles haven't played anybody. Let's go and look at – I wish that, I would have had the conversation with Joe before the show so we could have pulled up some metrics on what the 49ers record looks like. They played in the NFC West this year. Seattle, the Cardinals, what's the other?
The Rams.
The Rams,
yeah.
Okay? If you compile their records as far as wins and losses concerned, okay, everybody used to always talk about Tom Brady winning because he dominated the AFC East. They dominated the NFC West. That's what happened with the San Francisco 49ers. The only team that they played that was of some substance all season long was the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Kansas City Chiefs beat the brakes off them, okay? So don't talk to me about the Eagles playing the second easiest schedule and they haven't played anybody. Let's talk about the teams that every single team that they played was in a state of flux this year. They beat the Raiders down the stretch. Brock Purdy beat the Raiders, and I think the last 2 games, the Raiders and Seattle, I believe it was, that they beat. Come on, man. Neither one of those teams are worth a damn, So the Eagles play who's in front of them. The 49ers play who's in front of them, okay? You got the number 1 defense against the number 2 defense. You've got these 2 teams that are equally matched, in my opinion, in a lot of regards. The only difference is, we've got an advantage from the standpoint of every position across the board, I would say, with the exception of the number 1 pass rusher in the league and the linebacker position, and maybe the running back position. Other than that, we dominated them across the board in every other facet, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Seth, when you do look at that NFC West, for instance, they were a perfect 6-0 on the season against the rest of their division. So that is definitely something that needs to be taken into consideration. In the game that you mentioned, 44 points Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs offense put up on the San Francisco defense. Now, one of the things to look at in that game, I don't believe Nick Bosa was, I think he was just back for that game. He missed a game, I believe, earlier in the season. That was the first of 2 losses that they suffered consecutively during the year, which was to the Atlanta Falcons. Nick Bosa missed that game.
Can I just give you a rundown of what their schedule was, okay? So they lost to Chicago in week 1, okay? Then they beat Seattle. They lost to Denver in week 3, okay? Then they beat the Rams. They beat Carolina. They lost to Atlanta and Kansas City. Now, albeit they had a lot of injuries going on in the first half of the season. But Atlanta? Kansas City, I understand. Atlanta and Denver, which was a literal, hot mess from out the gate. And then Chicago? You lose to Chicago the first game of the season, and you're fully healthy, okay? Then they beat the Rams, the Chargers, the Cardinals, the Saints, the Dolphins, who were a mess because of injuries at that time.
Well, they were a good team at that point, and then he fell off the map after that.
So then you got Tampa Bay they beat. They beat Seattle. Yep. They beat Washington, Las Vegas, and they end up with a win against Arizona. Who the hell did they play? Come on, man.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. 100%. And in that game specifically against the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes just went nuts on them. You look at that other game, you look at the game against the Atlanta Falcons, another mobile quarterback, Marcus Mariota, not on the same level. I'm not saying that, but just a quarterback that can get off his spot, buy time, create time, and all that stuff. And Jalen Hurts can obviously do those same things. So I'll ask you this, Gunnar. When you look at Jalen Hurts and you look at what this team, this San Francisco 49ers team, wasn't able to do against the Kansas City Chiefs, is it fair in this isolated season to put Jalen Hurts and Patrick Patrick Mahomes on that same stage and say, Hurts can do a very similar thing to this defense that Mahomes did?
Well, he can, but like Seth said, you know, the 49ers were a beat-up team defensively. They were down 4 or 5 starters at that point of the season. But Jalen Hurts can still come out and do a lot of the same things. Now, both teams are healthier, and by the way, the Eagles will have all 22 starters playing in this game today. No other team still standing can say they are that healthy across the board. That's a decisive advantage. But Jalen Hurts has all the attributes you want, both in the ground game and the aerial game, whether he's handing the ball off, whether he's tucking and running the football. He has been accurate. He has been very decisive. He has been protective of the football. He has been everything you want from a championship quarterback. You know, you go back to earlier in the season, all he's done is enhance his overall play. And he's a meticulous quarterback, and he's playing this game in his own backyard. Those are huge factors going into a game like this.
You mentioned 22 guys back, 22 starters back. Avonte Maddox, the latest to rejoin the fold now after Lane Johnson a week ago. When you look at Avonte Maddox coming back, what are you expecting from him today, and what level do you think he'll be at?
They're not going to put him on the field unless he's sound, and obviously since he was not on anybody's injury report on Friday, he's good to go. Avonte Maddox is huge in terms of coming back to play that slot position because of the way the 49ers like to move their chess pieces. I think it's going to be a great matchup to watch if he's matched up against Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is very decisive in his patterns. But then again, he could be matched up against Christian McCaffrey. He could be matched up against Debo in the slot. You know, just the fact that he's on the other side of the football. Look at how disruptive he was in that game against Dallas down in Dallas Christmas Eve before he injured his toe. You know, disrupting the pass plays, disrupting running plays. And then all of a sudden, when he went down, Dallas started picking up chunks of real estate against that defense. You can't put a price on the value that he has. You talk about a star-studded defense. I think Avonte Maddox is the unsung hero on that defense because you can move him around in so many different directions. He is going to be a great asset when it comes to lining up against whoever they stick in the slot in this game, except one guy.
Oh, no, who?
I don't know if they have a guy to hang with George Kittle. You might have to put one guy on another guy's shoulders to hang with George Kittle. I don't know how you defend that guy, Seth.
No, hey, listen, you defend him by, you know, at least getting a shot on him at the line of scrimmage. You know, you got to understand how offenses are tailored nowadays. Everything is rhythm and timing, okay? So if George Kittle's has got a route that requires him to break in or break out at 10 yards, okay? When he breaks out or in at 10 yards, he's expecting that ball. And the quarterback is expecting him to hit that mark at a specific time. That's what rhythm and timing is. So when you jam him at the line of scrimmage, you delay the timing. So when he's supposed to be at 10 yards, he's at 8 or 8.5 or 7. And now all of a sudden, the quarterback, if he's the primary, he's got to come off. He can't wait for him to get to 10. And he's certainly not going to break the route off because he got jammed at the line of scrimmage. Now you force him to go, you know, to the second guy in the progression. As far as Avonte Maddox is concerned, I cannot express to you how important it is to have him back because I firmly believe, Derek, that he is the glue that holds this entire defense together.
Doesn't get enough credit.
Because not only is he a great cover guy, but he is a guy that Jonathan Gannon can utilize and does utilize in the blitz game.
Yep.
They run a lot of, you know, different coverages, disguised coverages, where he's a big deal. You know, you could see in the Dallas game, after he got hurt, every bit of aggression that Jonathan Gannon had planned for that day went out the window. Up until that time, he had blitzed 3 times. He had Dak on a 3rd down and couldn't get him down on the ground.
Right.
I just think that he is the linchpin for all the variety and all the creativity that Jonathan Gannon wants to implement in this defense. And when he's not on the field, he shies away from calling those plays because he just doesn't trust the other guys to get done what Avonte Maddox gets done.
Look, I'm happy Avonte is back, but I said all week long, I thought the Eagles had enough personnel-wise defensively to deal with this 49ers offense as a whole. Sometimes you spin that roulette wheel because if they get to the Super Bowl, what if he gets injured today and he can't play in that Super Bowl? I'd much rather have him in the Super Bowl. You don't play afraid. I'd much rather have Avonte Maddox in that Super Bowl against the likes of Cincinnati or Kansas City than today. Because
I'd rather have him on the field today because if you don't win today, then it's all over.
I know, man.
We all fishing. They fishing, you fishing.
I know, brother.
I'm fishing. I'm on that boat with you too.
No, you golfing. I know you're gonna be golfing. Whether it's in the country or outside of the country, you're gonna be golfing somewhere.
All right, we're going to take a look at what the Eagles are going to do defensively with Avonte Maddox back in the secondary today. What's it mean for Reed Blankenship? What's it mean for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, C.D. Deuce himself? But before we do that, we're going to hear from our friend Joe Messa, Messa Law and Associates.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Welcome back, JAKIB Media Pregame Show. Mark Farzetta, Seth Joyner, Derek Gunn. Coming up in just a moment from Lincoln Financial Field, we'll be joined by our NFL insider for JAKIB Media, our friend Mr. John McMullen. So, gentlemen, we have Avonte Maddox back in this game. We hope that Avonte Maddox is at 100% or as close to humanly possible at 100%. So what do you do in this secondary now? What happens to Reed Blankenship? What happens to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? How do you use all three of these guys that can play either in the safety position or in the nickel spot?
Well, you have some variety now, and you have the ability because now you've got another guy that you know you can trust, that you can implement and put in anywhere, anytime. So now you can give Chauncey Gardner, a little break here and there. You can move him down in the break in the slot and give Avonte Maddox a little break here or there. It wouldn't surprise me one bit to see in their dime package, when you pull Kazir White off the field, that the guy that you put in the box is Reed Blankenship. The kid knows what he's doing. He's a willing tackler. He really wants to lay some wood on people. And one of the chess matches that you're probably going to see today is in third down situations, how you can nullify, that Eagles pass rush. There are some formations that dictate that you have to go dime personnel. That's 6 defensive backs. Well, when you got a guy like McCaffrey in the backfield and a blocker like Kittle, the chess match is on now. You go dime if you want to. We're just going to run it at you. So it allows you a lot of flexibility, and it allows you another player that, Jonathan Gannon can trust to run what he wants to have run. And if there's an injury or if there is, a guy needs a blow, or if there's any kind of emergency, you feel confident knowing that you can take Reed Blankenship and insert him in, and you can move, C.J. Johnson anywhere that you need to move him to get the job done for the day.
Gunnar, how would you organize it? I think that's a great point. Talk about all the versatility, all the, lack of a better term, optionality you're going to have at the nickel corner and safety positions here. How would you orchestrate it?
Well, unfortunately for Reed Blankenship, he's kind of like the odd man out in this game because they're healthy. His reps are going to be limited. I think you see him in like third and long situations, basically. I don't see the Eagles playing much more than 5 DBs at a time, especially with Avonte backs. And unfortunately for Blankenship, for all that he's been able to do, an unknown commodity that has risen to the occasion all season long, he's not going to get the same amount of reps. With CJ, you need that guy back there in the center field. Neither one of these teams have seen the level of competition they're facing in this game today. Both have speed on the outside. 49ers have speed. You need CJ in the back end to roam the back end of that field with Marcus Epps, to go sideline to sideline, because Purdy doesn't have the strongest arm, but he will take his shots. And you've got to have guys who can get to the sideline on those deep sideline routes in a hurry. And I think, like Seth says, occasionally you have to cheat and bring CJ up, maybe drop Avonte Maddox, trying to confuse Purdy a little bit. But for the most part, you need him roaming back there. There's a reason why he tied for the most interceptions in the league this year, because of his ball hawking ability. And this team is going to test that ball hawking ability today.
I want to talk about the 2 main storylines I think you could take away from just the regular season and where the Eagles are at now in the NFC Championship game. What if I told you this before the season started? Which would you guys less likely believe? that Jalen Hurts would be an MVP candidate, not only solidifying his spot as maybe the franchise quarterback here in Philadelphia. What would you rather believe? What would you more so believe? That he would be the MVP candidate, or that the Philadelphia Eagles defense would get 70 sacks in a season? Which would you be less likely to believe, Seth?
Oh, it's got to be Jalen.
Jalen over the sacks.
Listen, you go out and you bring in Hassan Reddick, and you know that he's been a double-digit guy the last couple of years, last 2 years of his career. Josh Sweat began to come on last year. You had Brandon Graham coming back. I spent some time with Brandon, in the summer, and I could just tell he was primed and prepped, for a big year. And then, so you got massive competition, at the defensive end / rush position. Then on top of that, you turn around and you bring in Joseph and you bring in Sue and you draft, Jordan Davis. So the amount of competition that you're going to create at those positions, would probably lean more towards that being a viability than Jalen Hurts. We had a million, doubts about Jalen. Hey, could his accuracy get better? Could he raise his completion percentage? Could you give him a full field read instead of a half field read? Could he take the next step? His arm strength. Does he have enough arm strength to make the deep throw down the field? Hey, listen, those questions, his transformation is miraculous when you really stop and think about where he was last year this time and what he's become now. No one saw that. No one saw that. And if someone say that they saw it, they're lying. Now, I personally believe that he could pull it off. I just thought it would take more time. I knew that this year would be crucial for him to be able to get to a place where the organization could see him as a viable franchise quarterback. But the leap that he took, the only thing you can compare it to is what Josh Allen did in his third year. Mm-hmm. That's the recent comparison, that I can come up with.
Yeah, and I remember that comparison being made at the end of last year. Oh, he's not Josh Allen. Well, that's not the point. The point is that these numbers were achieved by Josh Allen, and they were also achieved by Jalen Hurts. It's possible he takes that leap forward. Gunnar, which less likely to believe? Jalen Hurts is the MVP or 70 sacks?
Great question, difficult answer, but I'm going to lean towards 70 sacks. Because of what we heard about Jalen Hurts as a person and his work ethic after that season, going into the offseason, we knew he was going to put in the work, put in the time. We did not know the level of excellence he would achieve. You can't foresee that. The season has to play itself out. The storyline has to play itself out. But do you know how rare it is to get 70 sacks in a season? The third most sacks ever in the history of pro football. Usually when we look at the season-ending stats, a team that achieves 50, 55 stats, we talk about the wow factor in that regard. But to go another 15 beyond that and achieve 70, and to have 4 guys in double digits in sacks, that's unheard of. That's a rarity you may not see for a long time. And because of the way Howie orchestrated this roster and brought in all of these dogs chomping at the bits, plus the holdovers he decided to keep, it meshed even better than anybody could anticipate. So I don't disagree with Seth's answer, but if you're going to twist my arm, I have to say the 70 sacks, because in all the years I've covered this game, I can't remember when I saw 70 sacks. I've seen quarterbacks make significant improvements. Josh Allen in Buffalo is a prime example from one year to the next in terms of making tremendous strides in his overall play. And look at Josh Allen now that he doesn't have Brian Daboll, watching him through games. Not the same quarterback, okay? But 70 quarterback sacks in a season?
In a Jonathan Gannon defense.
In a Jonathan Gannon defense on top of that.
That's where I thought I was going to get you, Seth, because Gunnar and I do agree with you. 70 sacks in the season.
I still can't believe it.
I just think that, when you look at the level of talent on this defensive line, and I've seen this picture before. I've seen a multi-talented defensive line, and the competition level that it creates, it's a healthy competition. It's not one where, you get 3 sacks in the game and I'm sitting over here pissed off because I got a half of one. You understand what I'm saying? When Clyde got 3, Reggie wanted 4. When Mike got 2, Jerome wanted 3. And it was like a healthy competition. So when you watch these guys, you just know. You know that the competition is there. And the talent is there, and it all came together. Will they be able to duplicate it again next year? Probably not, because it's a confluence of things that happen over the years. But I'll say this too: the Eagles only ranked 16th in the National Football League against the run. They accomplished that being ranked that low. I mean, normally you would be a dominant team against the run, forcing a team into passing situations, and then being able to get after the quarterback. But I think you can attribute a lot to that, to how these two teams, how the offense and the defense kind of work together. Because when the offense was just playing lights out and you get a lead, well, you just go get the quarterback. You just go get the quarterback. So I think that, the commonality, and I know I'm using the wrong word here. It's just the word just won't come to my mind. Complementary. They play in such a complementary way, that the offense helps the defense and the defense helps the offense.
There you go.
But Seth, you played a lot of defense. You watched a lot of defense.
I get it, brother.
When have you ever seen 70 sacks in a season?
Okay.
And I agree with everything you said. But that is phenomenal for a defense in today's game to achieve 70 sacks.
I will tell you this. Don't be surprised if it becomes more commonplace to see teams, with 65 to 70 sacks a season. You want to know why?
Why?
Because you think about how great the Chicago Bears was to be able to pull off what they pull off. And I think this group this year broke our record for sacks in a season for organization. Yeah. But we never had a situation where we had a quarterback throw the ball 40, 45 times in a game.
Very pass-happy league, of course.
So now the more you throw it, you create more opportunities. And that's just the truth of it all. It's like quarterbacks, and how many quarterbacks threw for, back in the day was throwing for 4,000, 4,500, 5,000, 5,500 yards per season. The number of passes per game is going up, and that's why I always say when you talk about the Hall of Fame and you talk about greatness, how do you compare today's game to yesterday's game when Dan Marino was only throwing the ball 25 times? You know what Dan Marino would have done on a yearly basis if he could have put the ball in the air 45 to 50 times in a football game on average? I'll stop it.
6,000 yards a season.
I mean, the record books would still yet to be broken if that was the case. Now, let's get to Lincoln Financial Field where our NFL insider, John McMullen, is standing by. John, I know fans, I said it at the top of the show, have been lining up to tailgate since 4 a.m. So let me just ask you this, and you're brought to us by our great friends at Thrive Financial Services. How was it for you getting into Lincoln Financial Field? How was the traffic surrounding the sports complex?
It was not a picnic, Mark. But it kind of cleared up as I got closer to 11th Street in the stadium. But, yeah, obviously people are fired up. A lot of tailgating early. So Broad Street exits both sides were really backed up. But managed to make it. That's what matters. So here we are, NFC Championship Sunday. And you all expected us to be here, right?
Of course.
Everybody.
Hey, John.
This team has been.
Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
This team has been the best team in the NFC. I think the most well-rounded team, pretty much from start to finish. But it was about midway through the season when you start to say, "Wow, this is pretty good," and this team's got a chance to be here. And to give San Francisco credit, I mean, they haven't lost in 3 months, so. This is a legit opponent, even though I have the same questions as everybody else when it comes to Brock Purdy handling this environment. But he's been lights out to this point. I think he will give the Eagles opportunities to make some plays on defense, and I think the key is the Eagles got to make them. So if there's an interception to be had, it can't be dropped. Otherwise, this is going to be a really tight game in the fourth quarter.
Hey, John, I want to ask you a question that Mark just asked Seth and I a few moments ago. What did you think would be more unlikely? Jalen Hurts this season consistently being in the MVP conversation, or an Eagles defense accumulating 70 quarterback sacks in a regular season?
Oh, boy. Can I say none of the above? No, I got to pick one. I guess I would say 70 sacks. For this reason. This was a team coming off a 29 sack season. I believe it was 29, second to last in the NFL. And to go from that to 70 franchise record, almost broke the NFL record in one season. It's pretty remarkable. Hassan Reddick, obviously a big part of that, sort of the last piece of the puzzle. But, you know, Brandon Graham, I think people forget, Brandon Graham wasn't here for the majority of last season because of the Achilles. So they didn't have him for essentially the entire season. And even though Brandon has never put up massive sack numbers, just a really good player that really affected the Eagles last season, not having him. So to get those two players back, but that's an incredible jump. You know, with Jalen, look, I always say, you know, the people that say Jalen Hurts, they knew Jalen Hurts was going to be an MVP candidate, are either just blindly, you know, drinking the green Kool-Aid, or they're lying. There's no other option. But he was a Pro Bowl alternate in his first year as a starter. He was a good player last year. But to see that incremental improvement to where he is now is still pretty remarkable. So both are crazy when you go back to the summer. And if you think about where this team was going to be, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be 70 sacks because, hey, no team in the history of the NFL has ever had 4 guys with 10 or more sacks. None. 0. This is the first team.
John, I'm gonna let that one rest. Talking about Avonte Maddox, tell our viewers how important he is to this defense and how huge it is that the Eagles have him back in the lineup today.
He's extremely important. He's one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL. The Eagles are, if you look at the advanced numbers, the Eagles are number 1 in the NFL when Avonte Maddox is on the field and the opposing team is targeting the slot. They were 27 when he was off the field. And there's a pretty good sample size each. He played 9 games. He missed a significant portion of the season. So you really saw the difference in effectiveness when he was on the field versus when he was off it. And then this game specifically said, Brock Purdy likes to target the middle of the field. He's not comfortable throwing the ball outside the numbers. And all of a sudden now you have Avonte Maddox and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Jonathan Gannon can do some things. He can use invert cover too because he's got 2 players he can trust. He can have, you know, mirrored positions. He could have Avonte playing safety, C.J. playing the slot. Try to fool him is what I'm trying to say. If it were Josiah Scott playing the nickel or Reed Blankenship playing safety, probably doesn't feel comfortable with that. So I think getting Avonte Maddox back for this game is really, really important. Now, he also hasn't played well, but when Avonte's healthy, he is a big, big part of this defensive success.
John, I do want to ask you about this defense for the San Francisco 49ers. Everybody knows now, by all accounts, the best defense in the NFL. Jalen Hurts has played very well against top 10 defenses, as our friend Jeff Kerr pointed out earlier in the week. So when it comes to this San Fran defense, what is the best thing you think the Eagles can exploit? Where is the weakness do you think the Eagles can have a lot of success against?
Well, San Francisco is really sound, really solid, but they're not very complicated. They play a lot of cover 3 still. They have that mentality. They're susceptible to giving up big plays down the field. So they're more likely to, you know, you might see the shot to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, even Quez Watkins. It's one of the few categories they're down at the bottom of the league when it's giving up those 20-yard-plus pass plays. Everything else they do pretty effectively. They have the best linebackers in the NFL. They have the best pass rusher in the NFL, and Nick Bosa is going to be the Defensive Player of the Year. It is a really, really good defense. But, you know, they're the number 1 defense in the NFL, and I think they gave up 1 or 2 yards less per game than the Eagles. So the Eagles aren't bad either.
Hey, John, evenly in areas across the board for this team, and I've said time and time again, I think the one distinct advantage, of course, is the quarterback play from Jalen Hurts compared to Brock Purdy, although Brock Purdy has been an incredible Cinderella story. But I've also said all of us, and I mean media across the nation, as we do each and every week, we analyze, we dissect, we talk about strengths and weaknesses, but I also mention the fact that there are so many unseen intangibles that decide the outcome of a game. Can you give me one or two of those intangibles that we, let's just say in general, don't talk about that you think could rear its ugly head in this game for either team today?
Well, I think the hidden yardage on special teams is a big part of it. So where you're going to start your drives. We've talked about it. You know, interestingly, these are the only two teams in the NFL who have both a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. But they both haven't been great on special teams. They both struggled at times, more in the bottom half of the league. So that's always a big part. Who's going to have the better game in that aspect of it? You know, Boston Scott's given the Eagles a little bit more juice in the kickoff return game. But I will say this. If this is a close game late, you don't want to see Robbie Gould on the field.
No.
If you're an Eagles fan, because he has been perfect in his postseason career. 29 of 29 field goals, 38 of 38 on extra points. But the field goals obviously would be the key there. And, you know, Robbie's been around for a while. Never missed a field goal in the postseason. So, you know, when you talk about a game with top 5 offenses and top 5 defenses, I start thinking about special teams. Who has the shorter fields? I start thinking about turnovers. San Francisco is +1 in turnover ratio. Philadelphia's +3. So they're both good at it. But who plays the cleaner game? Those are the things that are probably going to decide this game.
You know, John, I want to talk about Brock Purdy for a second here, because I don't know, you know, he's gotten a lot of praise, and he deserves it. The rookie comes in and wins 7 games in a row, 2 playoff games, a wild card game, and a divisional game. But if you go back and you look at the wild card game, I watched both of those games again. He looked disheveled, rattled, skittish in the first half of that football game. And I give Kyle Shanahan a lot of credit, because what he did at halftime is he adjusted his play calling, and he actually went to the run game to reestablish the pass game, you know, to settle Brock Purdy down in the second half. The run game is going to be critical. I think the San Francisco 49ers, I think they rank 7th in rushing in the National Football League. The Eagles are 16th against the run. And I believe that Kyle Shanahan knows that he's got to limit the possessions in this game because of the explosive nature that the Eagles bring to the table. They're a team that scores 26 points per game. The Eagles score 28 points per game. So in a lot of ways, there's a lot of equals, but you know, I think that there's been very few teams, except for that little stretch between Houston, you know, that Houston game and the Washington game, where the Eagles have really, really been challenged on the ground. And I just think that, you know, the game plan, if I'm Kyle Shanahan, is to come in, we're going to establish the running game right now, right away, you know, and try to figure out a way to get Brock Purdy acclimated early in the game, rather than having him skittish and out of balance in the first half of the game and having to adjust in the second half.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Eagles, you know, they kind of bake into their defensive philosophy that they're willing to give up a little bit on the ground to limit explosive plays on the back end. That's the whole Eagle philosophy. That's the whole really big Fangio philosophy, the new age philosophy of NFL defenses. This is a game where you don't have to worry as much about the explosive play down the field. You got to worry about it yards after catch. Christian McCaffrey, phenomenal. Deebo Samuel, phenomenal. George Kittle catching the football over the field, tremendous yards after catch guy. Even Brandon Ayuk is that type of player. Whereas the running game is a bigger part of it. This is a coach, Kyle Shanahan, that already went to a Super Bowl. He threw the football 8 times in the NFC Championship game with Jimmy Garoppolo because he didn't trust Jimmy Garoppolo, and he made the Super Bowl. And he was, by the way, was winning the Super Bowl for 3 quarters, not throwing the football because he didn't trust the quarterback. He knows he has to hold Brock Purdy's hand. And he's one of the best play schemers, play callers in this game. But he's also proven he can win using that path. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jonathan Gannon adjusts. Typically, as I said, he wants to limit explosive plays, and he's willing to give up some rushing yardage. You might have to shift that.
John, I'll tell you this. Had Kyle Shanahan continued the game plan in the divisional round and the wild card round that he implemented in sheltering and not believing in Jimmy Garoppolo against the Kansas City Chiefs, he'd already have his Super Bowl championship. Because in that game against the Chiefs, he decided that he was gonna put Jimmy Garoppolo out there as the passer, and that cost them the football game. If they just ran against one of the worst rushing defenses. So what worries me is that he learned his lesson, okay? It didn't work with Jimmy, and it cost me a Super Bowl. I blew another one in Atlanta, not running the football and taking it. So I really look for him to come into this game and establish the run, and I think the Eagles are going to have to go 7-man box to get it under control in order to get this game under control. Because, listen, San Francisco 49ers, they're not a team that really wants to hit big shots down the field. They want to just nick you and cut you, nickel and dime you, move the chains, score every possession. And when you get behind the chains on first and second down, and this is what happened to Dallas in the second half. They ran the ball on first down, a little pitch out to McCaffrey on second down, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. Those are so easy to convert and keep the chains moving. So the Eagles are going to have to, on first down, get up and load the box and put them in second and long situations to try to get to 3rd and long situations.
Yeah, I mean, if the 49ers, the thing is, you go back to the Super Bowl you're talking about, the 49ers had a 10-point lead in that game, and all of a sudden here comes Patrick Mahomes, and we all know how explosive Kansas City is. And the minute San Francisco got behind, it was late in the game, remember. It was late in the game. Then they had to have Jimmy Garoppolo throw the football. They were done. So essentially, that's the Eagles' path to victory. They need to play from the lead. San Francisco's not comfortable playing from behind. Now, they'll be disciplined early in the game. If it's 10-0, they'll still stick with the running game. But if it's the third quarter and the Eagles, late in the third quarter, the Eagles are up by 10, San Francisco's in deep trouble because they can't throw the football consistently.
John, of course, we hope that this is our second to last prediction we get from you during this season and the postseason, obviously. What are you looking at today for Eagles-Niners Championship Sunday, NFC Championship game? What is your official prediction?
Well, I am picking the Eagles to win the football game. I have it very close, one-score game late, and I think the Eagles will squeak it out. So 24, it might even be 24-23, 24-21, something in that range. However, I will say if it's a blowout, the Eagles are winning this game. It's not going to be a blowout San Francisco's way. So it's a very small path to victory for San Francisco. But again, Kyle Shanahan has proven in the past that he can navigate it. I think it's going to be a difficult game, but I think the Eagles come out on top.
I like it. I'll go with the blowout. I'll just take the blowout. That's all I'll hear from that. John McMullen, of course, our NFL insider, brought to us by Thrive Financial Services. Go to Thrive Financial Services right now and get your free retirement playbook. We'll be back. We got plenty more JAKIB Media pregame show, plenty more Road to Glendale coming up in a few here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, as well as 6